how I actually got away with sneaking out. It was the summer before my junior year in high school. So my sister and my friend were sleeping at my house. And I didn't live with my parents at this time. Well, 2 a.m. rolls around and we get a text from our friend. And he goes, "Oh, do you want to come to my party right now?" And we really wanted to go, so we had to come up with this elaborate plan on how we were going to get out of my house and get back in. Because we had to worry about a dog who freaks out every time someone leaves and comes back, motion-censored lights, adults waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I was on the first floor of the house, thank God. So I had my sister put the dog in the bedroom so that way he wouldn't bark whenever we left. And my sister really took one for the team here. And then I told her whenever they wake up, let the dog back out of the room and lock the door, just in case they came to check in on us. So we called an Uber and bolted out of my house. Like for part 2. Okay guys, sneaking out part 2. And for all of you saying like, oh, why'd you have to sneak out if you weren't like, living at your parents? I lived at my grandparents' house and they are strict as hell. Anyways, so we're at the party and we're having a great time, and I look at my phone and I realize that it's 4 o'clock and they wake up at 4:30 a.m. So we ordered an Uber and we had the guy drop us off down the street. So we're walking down the street and we finally get to my neighbor's house and we could see all the lights were on in my house. And my sister's been texting me the whole time basically saying, oh, they're awake, I hear them, OMG, like, you better hurry up. And I'm texting her, like, get the dog in the room, because he would have barked loud as hell if he saw us. And I forget if it was me or her, but one of us had to pee really bad and peed somewhere. So we're basically on our stomachs crawling back to my house through my yard, so that way none of the motion-censored lights come on. And one of them came on, and the windows don't really have curtains, so I could see my path, like, looking outside the window. Oh, there's gonna be a part 3. Okay, part 3, but for all the new people, guys, stop telling me to post the part 2, because I always post my part 2s. Okay, so the motion-censored light comes on, and we literally stop dead in our tracks. Meanwhile, we're literally laying in the grass, like, just don't even know what to do. And there's this side door that we were going to go through. So my sister put the dog in the room and we're just waiting for the techs to run in the house when they're both upstairs. But my pap was looking outside trying to figure out why the light went on. And then I hear him say, oh, it must have just been a deer. So my sister finally texts us like 5 minutes later that, they're both upstairs. And I waited so I couldn't see them in the window anymore. And we bolted in the house. And I ran in the bedroom and we both smelled disgusting because we were both laying on the grass outside. When we get in, we lock the door so that way we can change our clothes, act like we're going to sleep, and then unlock the door. And my grandma comes down literally 10 minutes later to check on us. Like if you want more stories on me sneaking out. Story time about how my best friend and I used to get away with hanging out with boys. So my friend and I's parents were really strict, which meant no hanging out with boys. Not even if a parent was there. And we would always come up with these elaborate lies to do stuff that we weren't allowed to do. And we were in high school. So we really wanted to go hang out with one of our guy friends. So we came up with this plan where we would tell them that we were going to a football game because it was a Friday, and that an Uber was coming to pick us up. And there really was no Uber, it was actually just our guy friend coming to pick us up. But since my dad didn't let me go in Ubers, we had to go to my best friend's house. And her parents were fine with it because they loved me and thought that I was the most perfect child on earth. So we get in our Uber and we just go to his house and hang out the whole time. I literally don't even know how we got away with this because it was the same exact car every time and the same exact Uber driver every time. Story time about how I got caught skipping school almost every day of my senior year. So our school had just started this new thing where you fill out all your contact information online. And my dad was like, okay, yeah, just fill yours out. And it pretty much was who can pick you up, who can make early dismissals for you, who they can call if you're in trouble. Well, I decided to be a sneaky little bastard and put my boyfriend in for every single one of those contacts. I would start school around 7:30 a.m. and I would go to the nurse's office at like 9 a.m. and she would call and my boyfriend would act like my dad and be like, okay, yeah, just let her drive home. Well, my guidance counselor noticed after about 3 months of me never being at school. So she called the number hoping to speak to my dad. But instead she got my boyfriend. And he just thought it was a random person, so he didn't act like my dad. Because neither of us knew. Like for part 2. Okay, part 2. Okay, so pretty much what happened after that is she called and like she found out that it wasn't my dad. And then she went digging and like she like called my sister to the office and she was like, "What's your dad's phone number?" And my sister was like, "Why? Like, don't you guys have it already?" And I also put the same numbers for my sisters so that way in case this day came, then it wouldn't look suspicious. Well, I don't know what she threatened my sister with, but she scared the hell out of her, so she gave her my dad's number. And so my sister told me whenever she got home, so I went to school the next day. And it was like a surprise party whenever I walked in the office. The dean was there, the principal was there, and my guidance counselor. So I got in trouble and then they were like, "Oh, we're calling your dad." So what did I do? I left before they called him. Okay. Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2. Extremely toxic best friend part 2. So pretty much her excuse for that was, "Oh, well, he said that he was gonna leak my nudes if I didn't send him them again." Which was a lie because literally half the school already had her nudes. So then I started talking to this other boy. And he lived like right down the street from her. So she was like, "If you want to go to his house, you can." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, just go tell my mom." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went and told her mom where I was going and went over his house. So I walked back to her house and she literally locked me out. Like her mom had to come open the door for me to let me in. And she was like, "Oh, it's a good thing you came back when you did. Because I was going to drive you home now and tell your dad everything that you did." And she goes, "I don't think you guys should be together because you're unexperienced." And she would always tell me how he flirts with her all the time. So after our friendship ended, she goes, "I just felt like it was always a competition between me and you."
I think I'm falling in love. She said, "What you know about love? Show you everything I got."
Story time about my toxic ex-boyfriend that I met in therapy. Little background information. I was a part of this therapy group where you would go every week and talk about your feelings. Well, I saw this really cute kid, so I wrote down my Snapchat and gave it to him. He added me back, and then we started dating like a week later. And for the first 2 or 3 months, everything was going smooth. And then he became really toxic and controlling. Like, he would always go through my phone. And any guy that I had a streak with, he would accuse me of cheating on him with them. And it got to the point where he was literally so clingy. Like every second of every day he wanted to FaceTime, he had to be talking to me. I had to have my location on. And I would explain to him that I needed my space, but he literally just did not get the hint. So by this point, we were literally on and off all the time. And anytime that I broke up with him, I would block him because I didn't want to think about him. But he started calling my parents and complaining about me. So they blocked him. And then he tried being friends with my brother to get to me. Story time about my... Welcome back to another toxic best friend story time. A little background information. I was friends with this girl since elementary school. And we had a really good friendship until we got into high school. Like, we always got along, never fought over boys. Well, during our freshman year, this new boy started at our school. Well, I started talking to him. And after a month of still talking to him, my best friend goes, "I don't think you should talk to him. He talks to a lot of girls." And because she was my best friend, I didn't think she would lie about that. I believed her and I stopped talking to him. Well, that weekend, I went over her house. And when I walked in her room, she goes, "Oh, say hi." And who else is on the phone but the boy she told me not to talk to? So after they got off the phone, I was like, "Let me guess, you told me to stop talking to him because you liked him." And she goes, yeah, I just knew that if I told you I liked him, you wouldn't stop talking to him. So that night we went to a party and he was there. And things started to go south, like for part 2. Toxic ex-boyfriend story time. So I was a junior in high school and I had just gotten out of a 4-year relationship with this one guy. Well, I started to see him date around, so I thought I should do the same. I started dating this new guy who was known as the biggest player. Since I just got out of a long-term relationship, we decided to take things slow. We both went to different schools. So we both had separate proms. And of course we both asked each other. So his prom came around first, so we got a shore house with his friends. And before we left, he bought me 2 dozen roses. This man has never bought me anything. And my mom was like, that's strange. I know exactly what he's trying to do with you. I now see that may have been a warning. But did I listen? No. After prom, we went to the shore house and he tried to make it happen. I said no. The next morning, we both left. It was a Saturday because I had dance and he had baseball practice. He went back to the shore house that night and I didn't hear from him all weekend, like for part 2. Story time about how I was the side chick. So it was my freshman year and I had just moved to a new school. And I lived next to this senior boy. You know, the one that thinks you're good enough to do stuff with, but not good enough to date? Yeah, that one. Well, we both were on the same bus and I thought he was really cute, so I asked him for his Snapchat. And I got it. So we started talking a lot, and we would always talk about me sneaking over his house because my parents were super strict. So homecoming night, I saw him grinding with this girl, but I didn't exactly think anything of it because literally everybody was just being passed around. Well, I went home after, and at like 2 in the morning, I got a text from him saying to come over. So I went over there, we did the dirty, and then I started to go over there almost every other night. At 2 in the morning. And there was this one girl that I got really close with. And I told her all about the situation, but I didn't tell her till like 3 months after it was happening because he told me not to tell anybody, of course. And she goes, you know he has a girlfriend, right? So I felt really bad and confronted him, like for part story time about how my boyfriend was cheating on me for 3 months straight at his new job. So a little background information. At this point in our relationship, I did not have much trust for him because of his cheating in the past. Well, when he got this new job, I decided that I was going to start trusting him. I don't know why, stupidest thing I've ever done. So a month goes past, he's been working at this place for a while, and he comes home one night with a girl's phone number in his pocket. And I'm like, whose phone number is this? He's like, oh, one of the girls that I work with wants me to talk about her problems with her. So I threw the number away, and I started to get really paranoid. But every time that I would get paranoid, he would be like, babe, I'm not doing anything, you know, like I really love you, I'm trying to change. And he said that literally every night. And his brother worked with him. Well, the one day he really pissed his brother off, so his brother was like, I'm telling her everything that you've been doing. So he calls me and says he's been fucking 2 other girls at work. Like for part 2. Story time about how my boyfriend was cheating on me for 3 months straight at his new job. So a little background information. At this point in our relationship, I did not have much trust for him because of his cheating in the past. Well, when he got this new job, I decided that I was going to start trusting him. I don't know why, stupidest thing I've ever done. So a month goes past, he's been working at this place for a while, and he comes home one night with a girl's story time about how I hooked up with a guy in my science teacher's closet. So my whole grade went on this field trip, and everybody was dressing super nice, wearing a dress. And I wore a dress that day, even though I was more of a leggings and t-shirt kind of gal. And I wore spandex under because I hated not being able to move around. Well, after our field trip, everybody's jumping around on the bus, you know, I don't care what I'm doing because I have shorts on under my dress. And after school that day, I get a text from one of the popular boys. And he goes, I'm really physically attracted to you. And I was like, oh, same, like, period. And he was like, wanna hook up tomorrow? And I was like, during school? He goes, yeah, I have a place where we can hook up. And I wasn't really experienced with boys. So I was like, fuck it, if I'm gonna experiment, it's gonna be with you. Cause he was really hot. So the next day I meet him during lunch. And he takes me to this one spot, but we couldn't hook up there because it wasn't blocked off like it usually is. So we go to my science teacher's room, and right after we hook up, our science teacher walks in.